all the fun chaos that Microsoft is. Thank you to all of our sponsors. I think they're mostly packed up, but haven't gotten a chance. I hopefully did. It's because of them that we're able to have events like this. So again, huge thanks to all the sponsors. In terms of agenda, going to talk about why does this matter? What's the importance of this topic? Going to talk about planning for governance and talk through a framework that I've developed after working with some customers, leveraging our platform. So like, how do you get ready for AI and then how do you operationalize AI? So really go from AI readiness to AI competence. As we have a small group, I would appreciate any engagement. Otherwise, I will talk to you for another 1 hour and 4 minutes. Rather be a little bit of back agenda. As a quick intro of who am I? So my name is Jared Matfess. I'm a solutions architect. Worked for a company called AppPoint. I've written a couple books. One was on M365 Copilot, on Copilot Studio, getting started. And then I wrote a book on how to introduce AI to your organization and what does that look like from a transformation. So you like to read books? You like to have books in your background? So it looks like you're really smart. My publisher said that's fine too. Whatever's your preference. Always super happy to connect on LinkedIn, chat, engaged. Don't hesitate. I do want to put a disclaimer. So I work for a company that has some software that extends Microsoft's capabilities. So because of that, I can be very opinionated about the limitation. I'm going to talk through a lot of those limitations and I get beyond sort of the marketing speak that Microsoft puts out there. I'm also Slavic, so I'm very blunt and direct, and I don't always remember to not be so direct. So if you feel that I'm don't who I am. Yeah, a little bit of disclaimer about me. Why does this matter? Why are we talking about governance at like literally the last session? I'll just be next. Very appreciative of Camp Boy. But I think the challenge is whether we like it or not, AI is everywhere and agents are everywhere. We've got the free Copilot chat, quote unquote free, but you pay for it one way or the other. Right? People being able to engage with it, just like ChatGPT. Got M365 Copilot or Copilot Premium or Copilot for M365, M365 Copilot. By the way, I'm writing a book on it on when they change the name. Because you have to go through every single thing, add that and fix it, and then fix it back again twice. So I'm not bitter. I'm just um, there's also agent builder agents. Now you can create agents in Copilot to extend and perform interesting functionality, whether it be reasoning over content that's a document library, have it perform some lightweight tasks. Got Copilot Studio agents sitting on Power Platform, and then Microsoft Foundry agents. There's a lot of AI capabilities, and Microsoft is definitely trying to realize on their investment in AI and their OpenAI partnership. I want to also call it like one of the challenges with getting ready for AI. And I want to quote Gartner because I think they did a good job of explaining that, many organizations are struggling with a lot of these capabilities because of weak information lifecycle management, and information governance, right? A lot of the benefit grounding co-pilots or agents on unstructured data in Microsoft 365. Unstructured data inherently is structured, right? There's no process to curate your own. Very rare that people ever delete anything because cloud is free, storage is free, cheap, whatever, right? But that has a really big negative impact. And I think we're getting to that tipping point where we're going to have to start to treat unstructured data as structured data, start to put in those processes, lifecycle management to be able to unlock that additional value. And there's the numbers are made up. I see every different partner or says, but like 94, 80%, whatever. A lot of these pilots fail to move past that sort of kicking the tires phase, right? Get a couple licenses, have some people IT, maybe the or maybe HR play with it. And there's a couple of reasons why these pilots never really scale beyond just that initial validation. First up is that data quality. If I build an agent meant to help provide policies and policies, policies and procedures information, we need that water back. I'm just joking. Like if it gives you a response based on the outdated documents, you're not going to trust that. And that's one thing from a trust perspective, but from a risk perspective, that's even worse, right? Or if you give the benign examples of like a booking policy. Hey, am I allowed to book business class? If it grounds it wrong, there's a little bit of financial impact, but obviously regulatory is way more challenging. The second is around security at scale. Again, the fact that we've gone from that on-prem paradigm of file shares, help desk tickets to get access to that information, to SharePoint and SharePoint Online, where business have the ability to manage permissions themselves. We've handed over a lot of control as that IT gatekeeper, and that's created a lot of the oversharing we're seeing across multiple tenancies. Addressing that is really hard to put that genie back in the bottle. Then, if you layer on top of regulatory requirements as well, again, if we're a healthcare provider, if PII or PHI data is exposed to the wrong individuals, there's the real implications of that. And a lot of what we've been able to benefit from is that security by obscurity. It's been, uh, paid that we've had oversharing, but it's maybe not as really exposed as it is now, or maybe the data isn't as important as it is now. And then lastly, this stuff is really expensive. I would say it's a Microsoft base, right? Like the Copilot is expensive, agents are expensive, tools they want you to buy on top, right? Between the Agent 365 license, the M365 Copilot, $100, E7 license on top, a lot of money. And I don't think I've seen IT budgets growing at all. Typically, you're asked to do more with less, working at cost, and they are shoving more cost at us. So these are a lot of the reasons that I typically see pilots not really scaling beyond. And some of these can be solved governed, which is really kind of the center of this talk. Up through like planning for governance around getting ready for AI. Kind of two concepts to talk through, right? You've got your call it like Gen AI as a service option, right? Copilot, or if you're a Google Shop Gemini, basically get the capabilities that they provide you, right? What you want to care about, right? Especially for the Gen AI as a service is the data, right? What you have from a data perspective, who owns that data, are the permissions correct, et cetera. On the agent side, you want to worry about like how do you manage individual pieces of software themselves? How many do you have? Who's able to create these? What's the purpose of them? And then what access do people have to make modifications? Kind of two high-level concepts. I'll start to drill down a little bit. I do want to talk a little bit about the who, because I think the who matters. And I get this question a lot in terms of like, who's going to be building these agents. So I figured I'd talk through just a couple examples of the types, talking about platforms, more of sort of the use case scenarios. Got your knowledge, a very simple chatbot experience, ask a question, get it grounded on a response from a defined data source. Right? Those are relatively easy to create. In fact, you can actually leverage agents to create those agents. Couple clicks, watch a couple of YouTube videos. It's not that hard. Average business user. Task agents, dial it up just a little bit, right? You now are kind of in that maker assist developer space where they have to have just a little bit of logic behind, understand connectors a little bit. Most likely, those will be like your citizen developers are going to be more of those task-based agents. From my experience. The autonomous ones kind of leave a little bit further. So those are more challenging. And if you're not familiar with autonomous agents, they're invoked through events and they can operate without direct oversight. So an example might be, if you're working for like a public sector organization, um, might have people that manage their mailbox. That might be how they manage work coming in. You could consider building an autonomous agent that would intercept that mail coming in. So the event would fire that agent, mail received, shared mailbox. You could have it start to respond back to that constituent. Like there's a question about, policy, whatever the thing is, right? That's a little harder, right? Because you have to know a little bit more programming logic, need some error handling, and especially if you're working with users that are external to your organization, most likely to be more of an IT pro or developer that's building like that type of agent. You also have managed agents. These are things that you kind of subscribe to, make some modifications. Those most likely be a little bit more gated until you customize it. Also, real quick, any questions? Actually, if you have questions, John, but feel free. Not that hard. Let's get into kind of the fun stuff. Planning for governance. So, background, I didn't even mention. I spent 11 years aerospace defense. I worked for United Technologies. I was infrastructure. I did application development work. I did then got into SharePoint, fell in love with SharePoint, then hated SharePoint, fell back in love with SharePoint, realized that SharePoint mortgage. I love SharePoint. Um, got a little burnt out, went into consulting, which is kind of opposite. But anyway, I did that. Spent 10 years in consulting. So I like frameworks. Me, my mind, just in terms of projectizing new technology, that's how my brain works. So I was, I get pulled in pre-sales capacity. So I get lots of exposure to clients and different stages. And so I started to realize that there's patterns that they follow and pattern for success. And I've seen this work in terms of like getting ready for AI. There's really four big steps. It all really starts out with discovery. So kind of get that current state assessment of how from a data perspective, from an oversharing perspective. Undoubtedly, you're going to find problems. I've yet to work with a customer that has perfectly clean permission. Doesn't exist, right? It does not. Not even Contoso doesn't even have perfect permission, or I think Zava now. So even Contoso does. Once you have your arms around what you have from a problem perspective, you want to start remediating. You want to, like, hopefully remediate for automation, having people fixing permissions at scale. That's a lot of kind of lower value work. Additionally, want to address data quality. The nice thing about addressing data quality is you can actually use that as a form of remediation. Start to get rid of some of your older content. You don't have to worry as much about that the permissions or the oversharing classification out of your tenant. And then once you kind of have that figured out, the next thing is how do you perform lifecycle management of the workspace? Because if you can purge out sites, etc., again, you're reducing profile, but you're also increasing the quality of responses coming back from Copilot. Now, this helps you kind of get beyond that sort of initial pilot, and then you want to start to scale it out to a larger organization, right? I call it AI comp, more about the operational aspects, where you're going to start to be monitoring the prompts and responses coming back from the users. At that point, too, haven't addressed external users, please definitely think about that. You're going to have some tenants, but as they're mixed in, around the horn, measuring adoption. So you're going to want to be able to monitor, not just from a security perspective, but on value. Because we implemented Copilot or we implement these agents, are people actually getting business value, or is it just like a shiny tool that's just out there that they could? And then finally, extending out to some lifecycle management. Sure that, again, these agents are adding value, not just unnecessary risk, and that you kind of tamper down some of the proliferation of agents. And just stepping through these different agents, talk about some of the native capabilities that Microsoft provides, as well as some of the gaps to be aware. Well, uh, I yeah, of course. I it's a great question because it kind of depends. Kind of depends on the client what we find during discovery. I've seen some customers go from discovery going, the remediation can be too difficult. But Mary Kondo and purge out a ton of older content, and then let's get a new baseline and see. So it kind of depends on the culture. Some people also are very hesitant about deletion or archival. That freaks them out. So it kind of depends on the culture of the customer that you're working with, from my experience. But there is no real wrong. Um, I would say you probably wouldn't, but also say, hey, if you wanted to, but thing depends. Have them do lifecycle management on the teams first, team sites first too, to see if you can actually use that as a way. So really, yeah, great question. Yeah, discovery is always the first step, but then it became hard as graphic. I was like, I kind of want to go clockwise because that's how my brain works. But then I'm like, but it's not really how the world works. Yeah, of course. Okay, so again, it sense just kind of draw it Dylan, and then I'm going to go to each one of these. Go right. So again, just pressure discovery, understanding the current state of oversharing exposure, mediation, building that plan to again do that through automation. Data quality is going to improve the quality of responses back to Copilot agent. Their workspace management is life. Then that's just kind of like, let's drill into discovery part again. Really, really fun. Okay. When we talk about what we want to do in discovery, right? The reality is everybody, number one, has sensitive data. That means Purview will tell you where there's sensitive data across your tech. But what you want to solve for, figure out where is that sensitive data overexposed. That's what, because again, you got AI data sitting on a OneDrive, that might be okay if no one has access. Permissions plus sensitivity, and then ultimately you want to build a plan to remediate. I'm going to show you doing this with some of the native capabilities. I'm going to talk about Purview, SharePoint Advanced Management, right? And from a Purview perspective, at least for this one, this is your baseline no, but I will take no license. But I will tell you the feature function, and I'll tell you what I believe is the right license. If a Microsoft person wants to correct me there, they can do that. They monitor the code. So I'm going to bring up Purview. I'm going to go pop into, and this kind of keeps changing because they keep making modifications. They're trying to drive more through their DSPM, their data security posture management, because that is an elevated license. There's a buy, so they're always looking to sell a thing. But again, if you're kind of old school like I am, information protection, that module still exists. Go ahead and drill into the data explorer. What this is going to do is expose where the sensitive those information types are a hit to doc. I'll just show you. I'm right now in the Data Explorer, and it pulls up all the various data sources. You can see everything from Copilot to SharePoint. Copilot are the interactions, SharePoint sites, Vault OneDrive, etc. So kind of a little bit, limit those, and you can see on the left, right, all the various sensitive information types. So basically, if you're not familiar with sensitive information types, those are patterns of regular expressions. Credit card number is always 16 digits. U.S. Social Security number is 10 digits with the 334. So it's really trying to do pattern matching, find those sensitive information types. Um, one of the fun, again, Get Explorer lets you start to find that. And the way it works too is when you upload a file, SharePoint, Teams, OneDrive, part of the search index process runs that regular expression pattern match, looking for those files. Now, would you believe that it's not perfect? You believe that? Like Microsoft isn't perfect? It isn't. It's a challenge. So be aware of the fact that well, it will sometimes do false positive on that. Now, sorry, yeah. So variation types. Oh, and also if you have purview sensitivity labels, it'll show you the number of labeled documents across again. But does anyone do? A lot of organizations are very early on in their labeling journey. It's been my experience because it's just very different. I've got more feedback on that. I'll hold off for a little bit later. I have a lot of feedback on that. So for the sake of just kind of having fun at one on a Wednesday, let's go drill into SharePoint because really, I think would agree that SharePoint tends to be an area where a lot of sensitive data is stored, and probably where you want to going to want to start to do some of that removing. So I'm now in here. I'm in the Data Explorer. I now have a list of SharePoint site collections. You'll notice that sensitive information types, the count has changed. I'm drilling down into a specific data source. And I'm going to go pick on that. A little hard to see, but it's the portal/community. And it's got 17 hits for sensitive items. What does that mean? 17 files that are sensitive that are met based upon this sensitive information types of file. That are problem. That are risk. We have no idea. It's a flat directory with no context. You have to sort of sift through, make a determination. How does this help? Knowing that there's sense. I mean, I could just spin the wheel and be like, hey, yeah, like that's really challenging in a large set. In a smaller organization full of sites, okay, yeah. But this requires a lot of sort of investigatory work to understand, is there a problem? Like if you don't have naming conventions for your sites and teams, a lot of organizations don't. Project Reindeer, heck does that mean? What is that? Like I have no idea, right? So like this is where like the tools are good because it does find the sensitive information, but it doesn't pull on the permissions list. You can't like decision on just that, right? But then you might, well, hold on a second, Jared. Like you're being a little negative. Like actually, there's other tools. That's not the intent, right? Other tool might be I need to use SharePoint Advanced Management. That's the new hotness, right? So I'm in SharePoint Advanced Management. Okay, this is part of the data access governance reports. So again, we're still doing discovery. We're still trying to find where there's risk within the tenant. I want to call out that one of the reports you might run is site permission across your org. So looking for broad permission access, which is good, right? That's oversharing. Everyone except external users, like that's what we're looking for. One of the fun gotchas is you only run that report every 30 days. So you're kind of in this weird limbo of report, you get some data, it's CSV file, work on it, and wait, run it again after 30 days. Now, would you think that business users should stop breaking permission, stop sharing content for 30 days? Like, we got to take a timeout, everybody. We're doing a cleanup. Probably not, right? Like, that's fine. Little, like I said, like, Satya said, we got to just pull it. Like, we need this Copilot thing. So here's the next one. There's a couple other ones. The activity reports. So like sharing, when you share a file with large users, maybe anonymous, or a file that's shared with everyone except external users. Those seem good as well. And those don't have that same, I don't believe those have the same 30-day wait. But here you get into a little fine print that last 28 days. Last 28 days. What does that mean? That means that report is going after is being generated by the unified audit. That's not pulling the actual permission on the files. That's saying if the activity happens during that 28-day period, or but if you've been in M365 for more than 28 days, most organizations have, that report's not worth much. Kind of fun little gotchas to be aware of. Kind of the price of free is pay for it, right? So, I'm not saying these are bad reports. The fact that this will find activity is helpful, but it's not going to give you the complete picture. If you're working for, I go back to, I grew up in aerospace, right? Getting the security wrong is a fine. In fact, as a fun tangent, the reason why I left aerospace is we got hit with a $75 million fine by the US State Department for shipping parts had a dual use purpose between military and commercial application. Fine, covered it up, $75 million fine. Every project going forward was how do we turn XYZ functionality on? Because the department of no. Already we're pretty stringent. Being a defense contractor, we got worse. So that's mostly why I left. So can't guess a list. Really big implications of it. So when you think about this, did I do the wrong graphic here? Maybe. Other thoughts to think about, right? For all this. Got proliferation of just crazy. You've got sites everywhere with different naming conventions, which has no context. Like that's really part of it. Got sites with no context. You got people who create sites. You start having people go through provisioning. So at least you can start to use Purview, start to find context of those, like take a Purview report, take a custom provisioning report and gel that together. Try to understand, hey, so this site is not meant to be for collaborating on sensitive data. I see sensitive data, something like that. Do you something to address this? Buy something to address this? Like some considerations to think about for this. Augment the reporting with something else. Do you run your role? You could do graph data connect. You could start to build your own custom reporting. Cost to that though, right? So some thoughts. And I'm not saying that you can't get data, but just be aware that there are some limitations might make this very difficult. All right. I don't mean to be like a fun topic. Just okay. Doom and gloom of AI and SharePoint and Copilot. All right. So let's talk about these things, right? Let's talk about, permissions, uh, public sharing governance. The reason why I care about public sharing governance, if a team is set to public, member is not even if you're not a member of that team, you'll have access to files in that team because everyone except external users has access to all the files in that. That's the fun little caveat with want to make sure that are meant to be private, not public. So you kind of want to make sure that the sensitivity of the files align with classification of it. Team, everything's configured. But so, more fun. Got a different graph. Here's Microsoft's remediation option. Find problem. Okay. Versus, and I'm going to drill into each one of these a little bit more deep. One's getting the permissions. Second is how to label your document. Anyone heard Microsoft say, got a purview, you got to label all those files. Got to go ahead and do that. Got to get 5 auto label, blah, blah, blah. We've all heard, right? I've got some strong opinions about that I'm going to explain. Then you might be like, well, to get going, because we need to sell those Copilot licenses, we could do the trick. So you limit which sites to return. That's not a problem fixer. That's more of a band-aid to help sell life. Again, we're off record, but I'm being recorded. There's restricted content access. This one's semi-legit. It's basically saying, hey, this is Look, access this team, regardless of a business user adding or people. There's caveats to that, and then there's life cycle. So, drill into some of the fun. So if people were good at permissions, you would have problems. So, thought going and reaching out to every single owner of every single site or team, having them confirm all these permissions correct is very manual. I've seen people try to tackle this, and it's like they just run out of steam. They whack 'em. Fix a site, break a site, fix a site, break a site, fix it. It's really, really challenging. You have to track this somewhere else besides native tools. Some of the reports won't refresh fast. They can never get in front of us. Education is helpful, but not going to solve this. This is not going to scale. Got data classification. Let's label every single file. I have done 6 purview projects in my career. Every one of them was pain. Not a single one was fun at even the slightest. Because first off, you're trying to get people to agree to the words, the name of the lake. And that's painful. Everyone has an opinion. Second thing is, if finally, after months and months and months of arguing, agree with the names of the labels, you have to remember that the label doesn't do anything. The label is a visual indicator to the user of the sensitivity of the classification of that file. Make it do something, create a protection policy. Protection policy keeps the file. That's what causes a ton of user friction. First, they're not used to applying a label. And B, they're definitely not familiar applying a label to file disrupts their business process. Because they're used to be able to create files and send to anybody, share with anybody. Then that encryption policy takes over. Not a lot of fun. Every one of these projects takes 15 plus months. Easy. That's not assuming 100% label saturation. That's maybe a small percentage of it. I'm not anti-data classification. I do think this is important. I believe truly it's a parallel work stream, not really an AI readiness thing. This is more of a general data governance, data protection thing there for your organization. And why illustrate why I don't believe this is the correct solution oversharing, but these are scenarios. So rule of thumb when it comes to labels, have between 3 and 5 labels. That's typically what I've seen as the best practice. Anything above and beyond that, just too much for the average user person for reason of. Start coming up with your initial labels. Say, okay, I've got my confidential label on Coca-Cola, the recipe for Coke, right? It's crown jewel, a lot of merger acquisition information. Really, it's data that's locked down to a super small subset of your organization, more of a need to know type of. Your encryption policy limits that small group of executives, legal, etc. And then you maybe have like an internal, have that catch-all of the data is not quite as sensitive, confidential, but you still don't want it to be exposed to outside your organization. Like, you don't want to be on the front cover of the Wall Street Journal. Not a really great look. Cause a lot of anxiety. That typically is locked down to just people in your org, or maybe just employees, maybe not contractors or faculty and not students. Again, depends on sort of the org. I think it's more of a more easy to digest. And then you have your public link. No encryption policy, security menu. It's maybe the work that you're doing in the community. Relatively benign stuff. Yeah. When you look at this, I can't really address oversharing with this. Not really neat, tidy buckets. There's very general labels, right? All right. Well, let's look at departments within our organization that deal with sensitive data. Let's start tackling with that, right? So there, you got, you got HR only, legal only, finance, like 3 kind of orgs that tend to touch very sensitive, right? Now I'm already breaking my rule of 3 to 5. I'm already at 6 level. I'm already in violation of my own classification. And these are relatively, again, think of this label with encryption policy locked down to that group. So HR is only going to have, access to start data. But then you're like, well, hold up. In the real world, HR does work with other groups, on legal work. If I want to do oversharing, then I need to have a label policy that allows HR and legal to safely work together because I can't allow HR, legal, and finance. I can't use one of these. That's not going to work. So you need HR, legal, label. Then I need HR and finance because they work together. Sometimes they don't want legal involved because legal's a pain in the ass. People want to do that. Then legal and finance sometimes work on contracts, especially for procurement scenarios, operations I don't even have on the slide, IT on the slide. And so you just create this proliferation of labor. That's not going to work. Because what happens when it starts out being HR and legal working together, then they have to look at finance. You know, I had to change the label of file. Am I going to remember to do that? Am I going to love IT if they got this scenario? Wait, how much arguing, pushback, feedback? I mean, which really, and honestly, out of the projects I've worked on, call at least on two of them, that where we pissed off that one person, it went all the way up to the CIO, and that's when the project got halted. What is that path to escalation? So I agree that doing this on the left makes sense for organizations to protect their data. 1,000% yes. When I think about like a defense contractor I work for, you know, we actually are the labels I would add to this, like ITAR, which is basically military application. I would probably do one for ear, which is commercial application. And then there would be labels that not everyone have access to, but when we work with other countries, have a licensed access to the data, that those would be separate. That fits that sort of export control process. You're working for higher ed, not doing 25 different labels. Like you're not, no bueno, it's not gonna happen. So some thoughts. Do you server you label? Do you restrict content access? Do you I just got cut out. Shoot. Hold on. I'm gonna go back here. My apologies. Gotta be more polished. Oh, this doesn't go with feedback. I'll call these out real quick. Restricted content access. Part of SAM. The way that one works is they need to find an entrepreneur. So we've got like a HR site. Okay. For this HR site, this entrepreneur group is the only one that has access to. And if someone tries to add a different person outside that group, they're the owner, that doesn't work. It overrides. So it's kind of like the encryption policies, but more at the workspace. That's possible. It's workable, which is things that you might need some business processes to be able to support those adds and removes. Or you build something for them to do different way of working. But it's also lower quality, lower value. Like getting a help desk ticket to try to go work that is not a ton of that. Lifecycle management is part of SAM. There are ways to send out renewals, like to get people's feedback. You can only do 100 at a time, 100 sites at a time. Have lots of sites, you have to start to state that out. Why for that? It's confusing business users, so you have to vary that up. Iteration. So possible, which is a lot of fun caveats. Oh yeah, SharePoint Advanced Management. Sorry, I sometimes speak in acronyms. Yeah, SharePoint Advanced Management. No, it's cool. Thank you for asking. Yeah, it's basically if you get one Copilot license, they used to charge for sale, which I think was crazy. I was like, they started being like syntax, and then like we need to get people to subscribe to Copilot. So yeah, that was a big aspect change. Yeah. All right, let's talk about next rung of fun. Yeah. So the ideal that you want to do when it comes to addressing data quality, you want to identify redundant, obsolete, trivial data across your OneDrive. And ideally, you want to do something about it, right? Either delete it, ideally delete it, or archive. And then hopefully there's a way to enable users to be able to pull that back if you archive with the all like ideal state. Again, the benefit of addressing data quality, or you get rid of, less you have to worry about the permissions being correct. Like a lot of times to your question earlier, like the sequence, get them to purge first. That is for sure said and done, but it is what it is. There are these concepts of retention policies that you can set to try to inspire content. I would say that a caveat, and I'm not like the deepest like retention policy person, but I would just say model typically is cheaper to like those are the two sort of actions for retention. Now there is also the ability to do archive. Um, you can get M365 archive. You can archive out sites, and basically that out of the search index takes it out of your active sites, puts it into lower cost, lower tiered storage. Not those documents that would not be available. Okay. Again, like definitely like data lifecycle management is definitely part of Purview. And you can then build out, obviously, like individual file plans. This is where it's like you have to go look in your organization, find that person's storage that is like the librarian or the records manager that typically interact with humans. You want to start pulling those people out there, understand what are your policies that are probably documented that nobody's adhering to around retention of all your files. Build that plan around it. This is also a really, really difficult project to do in that very long time established. It's a lot of cajoling with business users that don't really understand the technology part. Technology people not understand the business. So it's an interesting project. Um, I would say an alternative approach to this records management could be with collection that's just announced and gone kind of sort of GA with file level archive, giving you the ability to archive files. Again, takes it out of the active storage, out of the search index, with the archive state. You can still search for that. For where it's today, that is a meaningful action. Have to go actually do archive. So basically, let's be honest, they're not deleting. They're probably not going to be my case, right? Later this year, they will have policy that will auto archive files. So that might be something to consider. Again, just based on your organization. One of the real gotchas they're going to have to solve for, or that's going to be plus, is the file last. That's going to be something that's not available currently today to the APIs because you're basically, when you think about like, hey, I want to archive files, the number one question you get business user is, has anyone opened that recently? No. And then is it person or is it like if you have AI that's accessing AI differently than a person? So again, that's what they're trying to solve for your perspective right now. Once I think they've got that sorted, then I think starts some policies roll. Yeah, I see what you're saying on that. Like I think the challenge. Well, yeah, I see what you mean. Like if someone hasn't touched that site in a while, but hasn't been open in a while. Yeah, the way to think about it. But that pull request there with Microsoft, go get paid, guys. It's a good way of looking at it. And what? Right. That's an interesting. Yeah, I think about that a little bit more, just in terms of that. I feel like that might be a caveat in there somewhere. I don't know. Interesting. But also, but- so yeah. So yeah, considerations. You do retention label. You add a second label. Retention labels are different from classification. These files get dual labeled. Do that. Do you archive sites and teams? That's easy, right? Through M365. Or look at third parties, like just considerations for what's out there. Question: workspace man. Trying to so typically what I see is good. You want to enable some sort of an attestation or like a renewal. Get a business user engaged. Say yes, still need this site, still need this team, still adding value. Don't forget too, OneDrive is also workspace, individual workspace, but it's a very dangerous workspace, and that a lot of sensitive files tend to be in OneDrive. People tend to share stuff from OneDrive, and I think you need to figure out what do you do. Also, again, I agree with it more than once from a site and team provisioning process. You let people just create where you turn off self-service. And to think about. Here, what do we have from a Purview? So, kind of apply. activity label, the workspace, which is interesting. Um, Basically, with you're classifying that site as having some sort of level. Uh, Works junction with into create conditional access policies based on those that site classification. So, for like the example in aerospace, I could create sites or teams that are meant for U.S. persons only, and I can have that conditional access policy that blocks non-U.S. persons being foreign nationals in other countries. That's kind of cool. That addresses oversharing. Yeah, I don't have to even do classification at the file level. I'm relatively so that's an interesting have in your tool belt. If you're able to apply that more, very broad permissioning. Not everyone has the luxury of scenarios where that might not quite fit. But again, that's an interesting tool for you all to have. Also, um, I should kind of talk. You can set, yeah, with this the conditional access policy you set. You can set privacy restrictions. Like you can set multiple things on that as a means to again to keep that workspace your they whatever. And you can also run these are what I was talking about earlier. Those site lifecycle management. So this is part of SAM, MS management. Uh, a couple of the sort of site policy that you run, right? So I can say, inactive site policy. Site has been used a bit. Send the notification to the owner of that site team, right? To go, we'll need this. We can go ahead and put it in a only state, and then we'll have to purge it out. So again, a couple of there's also the um, yeah, kind of like the main. Then engage with the users, get the feedback, try to keep the things relatively like right inactive sites or regular sites. Um, and thinking through like which of these tools makes the most sense for you and your org. I don't think they all fit together. I think you're gonna. If I go back a second, if I start jamming out inactive site policies and site order, if I start jamming a lot of these out, probably needs management, comms out to people. Some other little fun caveats is there's not a great like escalation path for some of this. Like if someone hasn't responded, other little fun gotcha is people don't stay at companies forever. Sometimes they leave. So the other fun gotcha is why not have the right owners for those sites or teams. Or if you do funky stuff where you add an IT person to every site or team, now whose job is it to really confirm this thing? Is it the IT person? Or have some fun things. Cool. That's when I do my best thinking. This is my AI slot. Like if I'm gonna get my value. And if you notice, actually the fun call out is kind of like doing Gemini. Yep. Gemini is kind of like my image generator. It's pretty awesome. All right. Back on track. All right. So listen, we've gotten all that stuff addressed. I'm going to revisit AI confidence one more time. Some of the things you want to look out for is, interaction. You understanding what people are prompting Copilot or sharing your agent, where the responses, where the files that are being grounded in the responses. Maybe taking a look at what's going on from an external user man perspective. If I told you the amount of customers that I talked to that have a proliferation of external users to access their tenant, kind of crazy. They've never done any sort of cleanup, merge of that. Definitely a risk beyond just AI. That's just regular data governance practices. You want to worry about measuring adoption, so making sure people are actually getting value out of this investment and that they're seeing that $30 per month for positive things. And then having some lifecycle management around these agents. I was working with a customer that has 25,000 Copilot licenses. They're a big financial services organization. They had over 5,000 agents, like a couple months, about a year into their of agent. And they're all named like Agent 1, Agent 2, Test Agent 1, Test Agent 2, Agent 007, Agent 006. Right? It's kind of crazy. So, with the new access database is only more dangerous. So, a lot of fun. Okay, interaction monitoring. So, couple of elements of interaction monitoring. So there's like this inline like DLP enforcement, basically trying to capture as a person is prompting, try to make out it and block them from sending PII data, API data. We also want to identify any sort of risk interaction people have. Again, maybe getting access to files that they should have access to, and also getting visibility to any sort of shadow AI. Like the fun things about trying to turn everything off and block everything is people just like water find a way in, no matter how hard you try. So if you get too locked down, people go out and buy third party those instead, right? Um, how do you balance it? So when we talk about interaction monitoring abilities, I'm actually not going to be difficult. I'm not going to be my typical self. So actually, I kind of like what Microsoft is doing these days, review from a risky interaction. So what they are trying to sell is ESPN module. I know we would bring it right up, but I also don't trust the Wi-Fi here configuration. But this will allow you to drill down into actual individual interaction prompts, the responses, files. It's actually pretty solid, and it's where you want to, like, what you want to use for this. I don't want to have a listening conversation with you all 'cause it's just late. So, like, is it worth the value to do this, or do you Agent 365 to do that? Like, there's a lot of that kind of considerations for it. It's kind of meant for another topic, but you have a question. Starting. Okay. Okay. But it's relatively solid. Like, I don't really have a lot of against it. I like what they're doing. I like that you can look at the activities across, over time. Look at these are there's going to keep getting evolved as they make more investments in it. But I do think this is relatively helpful for people that are just trying to get their arms around what is happening in the environment. Where do I look? I will say there is going to be still some elements. There's going to be some areas of challenge. One of the key to be aware of is a lot of the purview reporting at this point is based on the data being classified. So having a sensitivity label applied, truly get at it. I think where they're directionally going to head is showing you the fits patch on the files. Sure, but it's not in there just yet. I check it every couple weeks to make changes. That would be the next thing. A lot of orgs that are not quite there yet from a data classification perspective. But again, relatively cool stuff. Got tired of thinking, so I bet. Don't be so creative. Um, I not really an AI. Be like super blunt with it. Like this, the external thing is not really an AI. I put external users in because I sat in enterprise IT for 11 years. Every dollar that I could get, I had to fight every to get IT budget. So when you know there's an issue environment, best way to go solve it, to connect that issue, something that CIOs want. Your C-suite probably wants to do something with AI. Might know you're sitting on a problem, negotiate with it. No, that because again, external users having too much access to content in your tenant is a problem that has to get. I've worked with a ton of orgs where they didn't even know how many files are shared. Shred. No idea. Go figure that out. Go solve for that. They've got people that are no longer haven't been with that company, not doing contract work, still like a permission. Not so again, try to address some of that. There isn't a ton of data. I could be wrong, but from what I could find in terms of like decent reporting, which is probably why there's a problem, can you use SharePoint advanced management data access cover reports on guest users? You're going to really external users in your tenant. Challenge though is again we're still limited by the unified audit, which again is a problem. Because never done a cleanup of guest user access. I had permission for a long time. Other fun like little gotcha. Again, kind of a fun tangent is uh, ghost you or like my brain's like forget that word. That account has been blocked or deleted on Entra, but is given granted access to the file. Who shows up in the permissions list is having access to that file. So when you run some of the reports, it shows it as that object has access to that file. That's been like since on-prem days. That's about reporting. Yeah, I got a little head tilt. What? That's a problem? Yeah, that's still a problem. Um, yeah, something kind of fun to be aware of. So yeah, this is one way to see some of the guest user access. Oh, sorry, I'm going to, yeah, you see guest user permission is the one of the columns in that view. You want to go ahead. Adoption, value, users to just what this. super important to have granular visibility adoption data. Like I have my opinions about what you get out of the box. Hold that for now. But you those you need to understand are the trend, are you trending positively? Because I found working with a lot of customers when I'm back in consulting that AI and Gen AI and Copilot and these types of technologies are very social. We have monkey see, monkey. You get a couple people in there that are really just getting a ton of value. They tell their friends. That's really how the adoption curve goes. You need to figure out who are those people that are the influencers that are having those positive experiences, elevate them for the rest of your org to see that. And that's how you truly get people on board and using capability. And then be able to share those success stories with your executives so they understand that this is the impact that it's having. And it's a mix of quantitative and qualitative data to tell that complete story. Um, when you look at what you get with out of the box, there's the Copilot dashboards, and these kind of keep changing. So I gave you a brief snapshot. These will give you some of the out of the box report. There's some considerations around that, like some of the entree data is difficult. You have to sort of like export from a record and import it, do that to get all of really fully populated. And it only runs like again, there's some limitations to how long they your data, how often the reports regenerate. But overall, I mean, there is data to pull out of this. However, having the data is one thing. Being able to translate this data to your executives, the next challenge, right? And so I actually stole this from Bart. I really like this a webinar that they did last year or the year before. And it was around sort of the business case pattern for AI. And I thought I just would share this with you all. And they typically see AI investments into three categories. There's defend, basically kind of keeping up with the Joneses, your different competitors. Um, Notice it's about individual gain. It's not like substantial, like marginal gain, micro innovations, like incremental. Group. Your second kind of bucket of business case patterns are extending, so taking an existing business process and inserting AI to help either recommend products and services, or the if you're a contact center, reduce the call time from 7 minutes to 6 minutes, et cetera. Then there's upend. You're trying to like break into products and new services and new capabilities that didn't exist before. And turn that on its head, you're really talking about return on employee for the and return on investment for extend, and return on the future for upend. And so that's really kind of the challenge, trying to sort of validate or prove that the Copilot or the particular agent having is generating a true ROI. Because apparently it's not. And if you think like, why, well, what do I do about that? Let's talk about it. How many times do you have to do an ROI for installing wireless in your new office? Like, it has been a while, right? It's been a long time since I did it. I used to do like wireless networks back in 2000, installed 300 plus access points across 15 different locations across our, and like, I had to do a business case for that. We had to talk about how many knowledge workers, how many people had laptops, and sort of do that math. But now everyone gets a laptop. Very rarely do you get a desktop, unless you have like a manufacturing or that doesn't have any wireless devices. Here, probably just invest in wireless or like VPN or mobile apps, whatever. You just do it as part of the cost of business. I think eventually Copilot's going to fit into that same sort of bucket. Right now, it's not because it's really expensive. One thing I will share as I'm thinking about framing up your ROI conversation with your executives is kind of like leaning on what's worked in the past. Right? Typically, any large IT investment, some level of business case, right? And you typically do like define your FT full time equivalent rate, kind of salary plus bonus, and fringe benefits. You that hourly rate, and I don't like Microsoft's like, oh, our top Copilot users are saying, oh, that's garbage, right? I think if you get real about it, there's a huge productivity drop when you first roll out Copilot, and then eventually as people get more used to it, then it kind of goes up a little bit. So just estimate like 1 hour savings a week tops. Don't get crazy. So and you get the FTE rate and do an hour, kind of have a good quantitative impact on that investment. Pairs up with politics. So for me personally, knowing like my schedule, my work that I do, I don't think Copilot saves me real time. I'm not like doing less work. I'm not on vacation or I'm not beat up drinking beer at the desk. artwork. Um, but I think that the quality of my outputs has improved. My emails are less blunt, less snarky, more professional. People are happy with that. Graphic usage is phenomenal, right? Like all my AI stuff, it's just again winning all the way. I also was able to help check bias, right? Also can use it that can improve my grammar. There's a lot of quality. And then I would say the other two are, kind of your net internal metrics. Are am I happy in my job? Am I happy with the work that I'm doing? Does have a positive impact. I hate taking meeting minutes. I don't do that anymore. I hate sending drafting up email recap. I don't do that anymore. Like I hate, to again kind of shift some of that workout. So a little benefits there. Okay, 9 minutes and 45 seconds. Go by 8. Oh, are we? Oh, oh, okay. I'm gonna keep jamming unless you guys have a hard stop. I'm gonna keep jamming. I got 2 more slides. You're solving for agents. Lifecycle manager. We're gonna get complete inventory of all your agents. Right? We want to also capture the business context. What do I mean by that? What is this agent for? What is it value bringing? Is it who's using it? What kind of data? How long do I need it? You want to make sure you balance that innovation with risk. So there's a lot of different types of agent. We talked about this earlier, right? This knowledge, the task, and autonomous. These are going to sort of drive different concerns. I've came up with this kind of idea, this concept of the kind of 2 zones of governance to think. So on the left, you're going to have a sprawl. Knowledge and the task agents very easy. Like business users can do it, makers can do it. So you're gonna have a lot of this. I think if you take like numbers, if you have 1,000 environment, you're probably gonna have 800 plus that are gonna be knowledge and task. That's being bulk are gonna be knowledge. So individually, those is relatively low risk, rounding on a file. But without the appropriate guardrails in place, you can have kind of major. So what I mean by that is like on the right side, have like the autonomous or digital worker style agents, ones that are able to act mimic human acting. That's a different type of risk because again, there's more of like policies, procedures, and like real time monitoring. What are they doing, and what are they accessing PII? Are they filtrating data? Are they doing things and are they going rogue? Right? These are a little less complex, and the risk is a little bit different. So my opinion is you have to address this like you have a sprawl problem and you have like a control problem. Are the two kind of ways of thinking about it. And then on top of all that, we're talking about like for agents that are sitting in Power Platform, there's other. So again, what's your environment strategy for these low code agents? Are you doing application lifecycle management, dev UAT prod? Do you have specific environments for types of agents? Kind of DLP in place to prevent certain connectors from being used by these agents? Do you have the roles limit who create these agents? And are you monitoring and seeing what's happened? Microsoft provides is Agent 365. So again, cost on top of your current entitlements on the control plane. From a capability perspective, you get a full registry of all of the agents that exist, both your Microsoft and they're starting to break out of the Microsoft ecosystem in third parties. So Google Vertex AI is one different type of agent that they're supporting as well. They just launched private preview to be able to connect to the AWS Bedrock. If you're a customer that's got AWS infrastructure and then that's kind of cool. I also do access control. So again, sort of access policies work that you can do. You actually lock and disable agents. You also can visualize the agent communication. Their cool little Canvas app. Um, and interoperability and security. And you basically what you're doing is they have glommed on top of Purview, Vendor, some additional monitoring and viewing ability to control agents in your environment. The one caveat that I will throw at you is the way this is licensed is per user, $50 per user per month with an annual commitment. And I think the hard thing for this one to stomach is as a user, I don't get the value out of that. Sometimes I get the value. You're flying RBI calling. This is more like an IT benefit than a business. Your benefit is a little bit different. It's not unique. Other licenses like that, but there's that. $99 for the E7 is also a lot to stomach. Basically, no help. Right? If you do all the math of what included, maybe it's like $20 off savings, but like, so again, I don't want to discourage it, but like, I could see that the other thing about this is trying to forecast how many bad licenses might need exercise itself. Because how everyone going to be accessing agent? Probably not. How many need? Is it 80%? Is it 70% of your population? That could fluctuate, right? You can have a ramp up where all of a sudden it's very low, then very high. I think those are some of the challenges that we're trying to see about the experience because people don't like that number and they don't know how to forecast. I think those are some of the challenges. As we're over, did a good job of asking questions along the way. If you want to connect QR code is my last AI slop that I've done, my dog. Um, hope this was fun. I hope you learned to hope you stand five on the day we're on. Please click your email. If you thought it was a good session, please click email. If you did not like the session, yep. And with that, thank you so much for coming out. I really appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.